Okay. Hello. Today we're going to be interviewing our winner from the latest Shallow Waters flash fiction contest, Tom Deady. And I'm going to let him introduce himself because I'm sure he can do a much better job than I can. So take it away.
Thanks for having me, Anita. Hey, everybody. Tom Deady, horror, speculative, dark fiction author. My first novel, Haven, won the Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in a First Novel. And I've since written a whole bunch of short stories, novellas, novels, a couple nonfiction pieces, and obviously some flash fiction, which is why I'm here.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your winning story. Summer People. That was the title, correct?
Summer people. Yeah, I don't know. I just saw the theme that Joe posted for the contest, and I got the idea for small town. It was small town horror, so I got the idea for a small beachside town where the population grows quite a bit in the summer, but then in the off season, it's just the locals there. And that's kind of where I got the idea and figured some creepy disappearances that looked innocent at first glance but really weren't, um, kind of fit the bill. So that's kind of what I went with.
So what is it about small town horror that appeals to you? Have you grown up in a small town, or was it just that sort of insulated vibe that intrigued you?
That's a great question because I grew up in Malden, Massachusetts, which is really a very pretty mid-sized to big city in Massachusetts. But when I grew up, I thought I was living in a small town. We had a very insulated little neighborhood. Everybody walked everywhere. We walked to school every day. We walked to the corner store to buy things, and we walked to the downtown area to go to the movies or bowling or whatever. And it just felt like small town. But a lot of my real small town writing influences come more from the books I grew up reading. My favorites were always Stephen King's It, Summer of Night, um, Boy's Life by McCammon, things like that, that kind of idealized the small town living and then threw in something creepy going on in the background.
Yeah, I would think Stephen King's probably everyone's first choice for small town
Yeah,
horror.
yeah, he's a big influence of mine for sure.
Okay, so did you find anything challenging about writing your story, or did it just flow off the pen?
I usually struggle with shorter pieces. I tend to do a lot of character development and subplots and backstory. So shorter pieces are difficult in general for me, but this one actually came to me pretty quickly. I actually did want to expand on it a little bit, but the word count kind of prevented that. But now this one I didn't struggle with too much, unlike most short pieces.
Okay, so what do you enjoy writing about short fiction?
Um, I like that you can stick to mostly plot. Like I said, in my novels and even in my novellas, I tend to do a lot of subplotting and character development, backstory for all the characters. And in shorter pieces, it's more kind of just sticking to the action, beginning, middle, end, and you're done. Again, typically the shorter work doesn't come as easy to me. I do prefer longer fiction, novella, and novel length. So I like to challenge myself with these flash fiction pieces and shorter fiction open calls just to kind of, I don't know, keep myself tuned up, I guess, to be able to do it when I need to.
Yeah, I write flash fiction myself, and I find that it helps tighten my writing up. Do you find the same thing?
It absolutely does. Yeah, I've noticed since I've been focusing more for the past couple of years on shorter work that when I do go back to my novel length work or my novella length work, that I can kind of look at it with a more discerning eye based on the work I've done in short fiction and say, do I really need this to advance the plot, or is it just, you know, stuff that I'm writing because I want to write about it. So it definitely helps my long fiction writing to focus on shorter work and stick to just the real meat and potatoes of what the story needs.
Okay. So, what advice would you give for writers who want to try writing flash fiction?
Uh, Great question. I don't know that I have a great answer for it. Um, just really sit down and stick to the point. If you have an idea in your head of a story, just try to formulate the beginning, middle, end of that idea without going down too many rabbit holes. Again, for me, the challenge is not doing that. I like the rabbit holes. I like to add minor characters that add some color to stories, and you don't really have the time or word count to do that, especially in Flash. So you really just have to stay focused on that main idea and drive it from beginning to end without getting taking too many detours. It's I do find it very difficult. I find Flash one of the harder formats to write in for myself.
Yeah, I find it helps too if you look at it like you're writing a scene, but a self-contained scene. That helps quite a bit anyway. But
That's a great way to look at it. Actually, yes, it is more like a scene. Yes, good point.
yeah, and I also write a 100 word story. So if you really want to challenge yourself, try those because that's difficult.
I've done a couple of those. Those are very challenging. I did have a couple published in one of Kevin Kennedy's books, 100 word horrors, I think he calls them. He's got a few of them out there. Um, I just don't feel like there's the room there. I mean, I think it's a fun little exercise to do. I don't love doing it, but yeah, I don't like going much shorter than the 1,000 word flash pieces I do.
I actually like writing the 100 word stories.
Do
You
you?
can
Yeah,
actually,
it's definitely
it's
it's
an
very
acquired
different than
taste.
anything else.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste, but I do enjoy it. Anyway, so what is it about the horror genre that appeals to you writing in it?
You know, I think about that a lot when I'm reflecting on my work, and I I think I find it as gruesome and obviously horrific as it can be. It's still an escape from the real horrors in the world, especially the older I get with having raised children and just seeing things going on in the world around me. I look at horror as a safe escape. I mean, I know there's going to be scary things, but I know they're kind of contained in the pages of the book and a little bit in my imagination as well. But I know it's just kind of a safe place for me. I enjoy a lot of the tropes that other people kind of get sick of. I still love a good vampire story or a good cryptid story, creature feature type thing. I don't know. I've just always found solace there. It's what I grew up reading, what I grew up watching on TV, and it's just always been my go-to safe place.
Okay, so what is the hardest part of writing horror for you? What do you struggle with?
um keeping ideas fresh. Like I said, I do love some of the well-worn tropes, the small town stuff, the creature stuff, and I even have a vampire novel that I will be finishing the sequel to, and keeping those well-traveled ground with a new eye or a new twist, if you will. That's the hard part for me. And the way I usually solve that is again through my characters. Most of my stories, regardless of what the monster is or what the evil is, they're very character driven stories, and I try to really paint very realistic, three-dimensional, flawed heroes and sometimes sympathetic villains even. So I think that's how I get around the trope is to bring fresh characters to each one.
Yeah, I think if a reader can connect to the character, it keeps the trope fresh indeed. So
Exactly.
what's your greatest challenge as a writer in general?
Finding time to write. Unfortunately, I still have one of those full time day job things. So, yeah, I am kind of the opposite of people that talk about having writer's block. Like I have whatever the opposite of writer's block is. I have so many ideas, so many things I want to write about, and just finding the time to sit down and focus and get it all done is all I struggle with, really.
Okay, so tell us about some of your other books and projects and give readers a chance to discover them.
Sure. So again, my first novel, Haven, won the Bram Stoker Award. It's really my kind of my love letter to the books I mentioned earlier that I grew up reading. Summer of Night, Boy's Life, things like that. Small Town Kids versus Monster, very not very gory, or I don't know, maybe not even that scary, but just I think it's a great coming of age type story. Eternal Darkness was my second novel, which Crystal Lake has now. Um, it's a vampire story. Again, it's very strong in the coming of age, small town vibe. But I think I brought a new twist to the vampire trope. I tried to um, bring in some vaguely scientific reasons why vampires could exist. Hopefully, I pulled that off. And like I said, I do have a sequel to that. Um, I have a young adult book called The Clearing, which is loosely inspired or based on true events that took place back in the 70s, where a young girl, 16-year-old girl, went missing from this small town in New Jersey. And when they found her body, there were rumors of all these religious things around her, and it kicked off this big satanic panic. They thought there was this child killing cult running around their town, which all proved to be false. But in my adaptation of it, it's true. There's a child killing cult that kidnaps kids and basically steals their youth to keep the cult leader eternally young. Um, my next book coming out, hopefully first of the year, is my take on kind of a supernatural thriller. It's about a boy whose entire family was murdered while he was out camping in a tent in his backyard with his best friend. His best friend went in to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, interrupted the murders, and he was killed as well. And the action takes place 10 years later when he moves back to town and realizes that um, his memories of what happened that night may or may not be real. It's kind of an unreliable narrator story, and I hope I keep the readers guessing on whether or not the ghost aspect is real or not, at least till the end. But again, that should be coming out probably January.
Okay, so do you have any other projects coming up that you can give us little teasers on?
I do. I also have coming out next year sometime from Cemetery Dance. I have a weird Western novella, which I had an absolute blast writing because aside from horror, the Old West is another kind of favorite hobby of mine to read about. I recently moved to Arizona, so I go out and look around a lot of the old ghost towns out there and get a lot of ideas. So I have a weird Western novella with an accompanying. It's actually two novellas. It was a little bit short to be released on its own, so I told them I would write an accompanying story that's in the same universe with some overlapping characters. So it's called A Blade to Silence the Screams, and it will be out from Cemetery Dance sometime next year. I don't have a date yet. And I also have the second book in the Clearing series. The main characters that solve the mystery of the cult there are going to be recurring characters in at least a 3-book series. So the second one should be coming out late next year from Vesuvian Media.
They sound wonderful, so be sure to look for those. And I think we'll wrap the interview up here and tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
Sure. I am on Facebook. You can find all my books on Amazon. You can get signed copies of all my books at tomdeady.com. And the majority of them are available in Audible as well. I'm also on TikTok, being a goof, and Instagram as well. You can find me.
Okay. So, thanks for stopping in to chat with us, and that's all for now.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.